How are you doing, buddy? What'd you think of Friday night?
Well, I mean, no notes, really, right? I mean, that's about as virtuoso of a performance as you can have in a preseason game. And not only was it a complete win, but all the things, if you kind of asked yourself, what are the question marks about this Seahawks team? All of the biggest questions were the things that shined brightest in that game, whether it was offensive line, Sam Darnold, Clint Kubiak, all of those things looked really, really good. And maybe ironically, the only thing that didn't look great was the starting defense, which, didn't look terrible, but wasn't as amazing as the rest of the guys.
Trying to think of a performance, Brian, in preseason and regular season of the last decade where the offense has felt that in tune. Whether you want to go to Jake Bobo talking about just kind of all the connected elements to it, everything looking the same. It was first string, it was second string, it was even the third string guys that are moving and shifting and doing it with an intent. The execution was flawless, but I'm just talking about the interconnectedness. Have your eyes seen that over the last 10 years? Look in any environment quite like that.
Brock, I think you're being kind by limiting it just to preseason games. I mean, when's the last time there's a regular season game where you felt like the play caller had that kind of rhythm and sequencing and thoughtfulness to how he's approaching? Now, granted, you're going up against much easier looks. Like, the defense isn't showing you anything crazy. They're not game planning for you. But I'm going to be looking at this more in detail later this week and some of the All-22 stuff, but there were plays in there. There's little innovations. The JSN route where he is coming around, literally flips around, turns the other way in the backfield, and is wide open on the first drive for 8 yards. Then Robbie Utes, a similar route where he just spins around. He is wide open for a big gain. I don't think the Seahawks have had a truly good play caller since probably Mike Holmgren. And I'm not talking a good OC. I think Brian Schottenheimer was a decent OC. I think Darrell Bevel obviously won a Super Bowl as an OC. But play calling's different, Brock. You know that. And there's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of coordination and sequencing. And I don't think since Mike Holmgren we've really had a guy in Seattle that excelled in that capacity.
So I totally agree with you.
Might.
I totally 100% agree with you. I showed up here right after Holmgren retired, so I didn't get to watch Holmgren as a member of the Seattle media. But the next year was Jim Mora. That's the year I got here. I have not seen a game like last night in the 16 years that I've lived in Seattle, or since Friday night, rather, in the 16 years that I've lived in Seattle. I just haven't seen it. And I keep saying it's the Salk doctrine. If you want to run the ball, you got to run the ball. Well, they did. They ran the ball because they called running plays, and there were different kinds of running plays, and the sequencing of it all, and it looked so competent. It was amazing.
Like it looked like Sean McVay.
It looked like a normal NFL offense instead of whatever it is that we've always watched here, Brock, during our time together, where we're like, man, Seahawks games just look different from everybody else's games. That didn't. That looked like a dominant running attack, the type you've seen from San Francisco, L.A., Detroit last year. Like, isn't that what Mike McDonald wants? And we finally got to see some of it. And not just the preseason element of winning the battles, but like calling running plays isn't a preseason versus regular season thing. That's just who he is and what he decided to call in a game.
Yes, that is very true. And you guys have seen some of the practices. It's not just the game. They are committing to running the ball during practices. And I was talking to Anthony Bradford yesterday for the second time, and to my eyes, these have been the most physical padless practices. I'm not talking about when the pads are on, but when the pads are off, you almost can't tell the difference in terms of the intensity in these practices. I don't remember the 1v1 pass rush drills in past years being as physical, or even doing that sometimes without pads on. So I think it just is carrying over into the game. And one of the most just delicious things, if you hate the 49ers the way I hate the 49ers, the Seahawks are doing what Kyle Shanahan can't do recently. There are 49ers fans and media members who watched that game on Friday, and they're like, wait a second, that looks like we used to look. Now we've become a Brock Purdy-centric team. They might be following the Russell Wilson path of we paid this quarterback, now we got to build an offense around him, and getting away from what made them a dominant team. So I certainly wouldn't mind seeing the Seahawks out Shanahan.
So who do you, in Brian Nemhauser, Hawk Blogger here with us, who do you point to in a credit pie of giving the most credit to of how they've been able to synchronize, sequence, do all of this, turn Anthony Bradford around, look not even like a competent offensive line, but a just fully formed and mature offensive line? Kind of slice up the credit pie from what your eyes have seen out there at camp.
Yeah, I might start in a place that's different than most. I would start with John Schneider. I think this whole change is either it was going to be a referendum on John Schneider, right? Pete Carroll left. It was like, good luck, now it's your turn. And he made the decision. His biggest decision was to hire Mike Macdonald. I think that is going to look like one of the best decisions. It's going to look like a Russell Wilson trade decision in the future. And then Mike Macdonald made the decision to move on from Ryan Grubb immediately, which was also the right decision. And he went through a pretty lengthy process to choose Clint Kubiak. You know, he looked at the guy from Detroit that coached the offensive line. He went with Kubiak because he also came with not only a play caller, but with an entire offensive line coaching staff with John Benton, with Rick Dennison, Justin Outen. And so once all those things were in place, Brock, I mean, John Benton, I did a show a while ago. I looked at how much impact he had on the offensive linemen in New Orleans in year one. He was taking guys that you have never heard of, journeymen, and turning them into credible starters. Almost every player made a meaningful jump in their quality, especially as run blockers. And so it's not a big surprise that now with better talent, and I do think there's better talent, that this is a room that's really responding. And from my understanding, guys, it was John Benton who said, no, I don't want a veteran. I don't want necessarily to get one of these old guys. Let me work with these young guys. And he kind of bet on himself. And I think you got to give him a ton of credit for what we're seeing so far.
Yeah, if that works. I mean, and to credit both of you, you've both been pretty high and probably higher than most on what this Seahawks offensive line would be capable of. If what we saw Friday is any indication, you are going to look very smart over the course of this season. How about getting away from just the running game or specifically the offensive line? Who else looked good? Who jumped out to you watching the game on Friday?
Yeah.
Who didn't?
I think the tight ends.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, Brock said,
who didn't? I think the better question
who didn't?
was like,
who didn't?
Yeah, because everybody played pretty darn well.
I've got some answers for that, by the way. But I think that the tight ends are going to be really good. And I responded to some national sound the other day of, the Seahawks don't have any tight ends to run this offense. It's a heavy tight end team. And I think the league has no idea what's coming from A.J. Barner, Elijah Arroyo, even Eric Saubert. I think those guys are all going to fit this offense hand in glove and set a lot of tone. So I think they were great. I think Derek Young, guys, this is going to be a really tough cut in the receiver room. I think Derek Young and Jake Bobo are going to make this roster. I think even with the $3.5 million guaranteed, I think Marquez Valdez-Scantling does not.
We'll just let that sit there.
Did he play on Friday and not do much, or did he not play?
I mean, the last time Hawk Blogger said something like that, what was that, before the Combine?
Mm-hmm.
I think you kind of said something about maybe Geno not being a Seahawk. Like, I think the last time you made a pretty kind of bold prediction or two, they've kind of paid off. So is this instinct? Is this what you're hearing? Is this just what your eyes have seen for the last month?
This is me really mulling this over and looking at the 53 with what's gone on. And look, I think Derek Young and Jake Bobo are excellent special teams player. MVS has no special teams role. The back end of your receiver room has got to be special teams players. And both Derek Young and Jake Bobo can block as blocking receivers. They're good in the run game. And Derek Young has shown that he can be explosive, which is really the thing you're looking for MVS. And so Torrey Horton's already jumped over, I think, MVS on the pecking order. So I think they're going to try to find someone that can move him. I'll tell you the even bigger bombshell that I'm really wondering about, guys. I wonder if Christian Haynes makes this team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not really wondering about him. I got to be honest. Like, he may or may not make it, but I don't really care that much. Like,
well, just body type wise,
like,
I mean,
whatever.
Honestly, watching him and watching pretty closely. Now, he was with the 2s. Lamea was with the 3s, right? So you just kind of look at the pecking order of that. That's a big week in that competition, I would imagine, too. And Thursday in particular against a pretty good Green Bay group. But just, yeah, watching his body type.
Well, so
you look at the rest of them, Brian. The rest of them are pretty buttoned up. There's not a lot of fluffy stuff going on. And bless his heart, man, he's worked his butt off to do all he can to be in the best shape he can. But just from a physical body standpoint, I think he's an outlier with the rest of those guys.
Tell me how this is all going to work. So you're going to take three quarterbacks, right? So off the bat, you're kind of down a roster spot compared to everybody else because I think they're going to take 3 quarterbacks. My guess is that the backup on game day will be Jalen Milroe because he can come in for some special situations, and Locke ends up being the emergency quarterback, even though he's probably the guy that would start a game if something were to happen to Darnold. But, okay, so you're going to take 3 quarterbacks. You're going to take all these running backs? You're going to take Kalani and Martinez and K9 and Charbonnet and a fullback? You're going to take and Brady Russell and Oots and those 3 tight ends you mentioned? Like, you can't do all of those things and take all the wide receivers you want. Like, you just ran out of options.
You do. I have them keeping only 4 backs. I think it's Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and Halani in addition to Oots as your fullback. And then Russell I'm counting as a tight end. He's been in the tight end room. I have him keeping those 4 tight ends with Arroyo, Barner, Saubert, and Russell. Russell obviously can play fullback as well. I don't have Damian Martinez making the roster. I don't have Jacardier Wright making the roster. And I think those guys can maybe be practice squad guys. But I think the wide receiver room is going to be a really tough one. I think offensive line is going to be tough. I think defensive line, the other 2 guys we talked about or didn't talk about that had really nice games. Quinn Bohanna has been good in preseason. I know they like what they've gotten from him. And Brandon Peely has played really well. I think both of those guys wind up making the roster. And I don't think Jonathan Hankins is the guy that they take off of NFI. I think they just kind of stash him away, and if they need him, they use him. But I think they go with these young guys.
So what about the conversation Tom Pelissaro continues to stir up? I know where you are on Abe Lucas, and would you love to see him get extended before the season begins, and maybe a few of the other guys. Are you in any way entertaining Trey Hendrickson?
Well, sure. I mean, I think Diana Rossini came out with they want a young player and a first-round pick, and it's like, yeah, I would like to be 4 inches taller and 20 years younger.
Pelissaro was saying. He was the opposite. He was like, yeah, they'll take a player and something else.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it's a player and a third is probably a reasonable place to land, and I think the Seahawks should consider it. I don't know if they will do it. I know Mike's 100% down on this to do it. But it's a lot. You know, the thing that's key here, and Brady,
like Mike McDonald or Mike Salk. You got
Mike Salk.
Which one
Mike
Salk.
Oh,
okay.
Kind of the 2 big Mikes in town.
Just looking for clarification for that. Just looking for clarification.
2 big Mikes, yeah.
Brady's been clear on this as well. John Schneider doesn't trade and extend. He trades and then waits for a full season to make sure the guy is going to be a good fit in the locker before he extends. I think bringing a guy that's going to want that much money, trading a 3rd-round pick, maybe trading one of your young edge rushers like Boye Mafe, I think it makes sense. I don't know if they will want to spend all of that versus just signing a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, or maybe they are happy with where Uchenna Nwosu is developing, coming back from his injury, and they'll be fine with just sticking with him.
Yeah, I guess I loved what they did the other night offensively. It really kind of gave me almost a new view of what this team could be capable of, and maybe that's dumb after a preseason game. Like, preseason shouldn't tell you that much and shouldn't change that many of your opinions, and it doesn't really on the personnel, but it kind of does on the offensive coordinator and the personnel groupings and the play calling and all the stuff we've kind of talked about at the beginning of this. If your offense is going to be that, like, potentially decent, don't you owe it to the team to try to bring in the one thing you're kind of missing on defense, which is a guy who can legitimately get to the quarterback?
Yeah, I will not argue at all with that. I mean, if you just put your hand over all the stuff I just said and say, what does this team look like with Trey Hendrickson on one of the edges? I think you've got the clear division favorite. Knowing what's going on, we're going to find out apparently later from Mr. McVay what's going on with the back herd around the world down in LA. And then the 49ers can barely get like 12 guys on the field or 11 guys on the field at any time with all the injuries. I think this division is there for the taking, and I think the NFC is there for the taking. And I think a move like that would tell this roster that the front office believes that they can be more than just a playoff team.
Last thing for me, Brian, your favorite anecdote or interview over the last 4 weeks of camp?
That's a good one. I mean, it's tough. I've talked to a bunch of the guys, and I've really liked the Anthony Bradford story. I think that I don't know if anyone has gone from as low as he was in terms of expectations to as high as he's become. But I think my favorite was probably when I was supposed to talk to Charles Cross. And here's a still very young, like 23, 24-year-old left tackle. And this is a room that is one of the youngest offensive lines in the NFL, and they're looking for leaders. And he says, no, wait, we're not going to do this without the rest of my guys. And he pulled over all the other offensive linemen to be part of the interview and wanted them to share in the spotlight. And for me, that was just a signal of a guy that's, wanting to take the next step and wanting to be part of this team long term. And I think he's shown that even after he had the surgery, taking reps out there, any time he could, even after getting, cast on his hand and all that kind of stuff.
Sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good. It was a fun week. That was a fun one on Friday night, and it's been an interesting camp and sort of watching the way some of these storylines develop and, the way some opinions may change and others get sort of hardened over the course of watching them. Every season is new, and I thought Friday was just a nice look into what this team is. Who we didn't even ask about? What'd you think of Sam Darnold? Because, he's the most important player on the team right now. Like, what'd you think of Darnold?
He was terrific. I mean, the word I've used for when the offense took this massive step forward, I think it was a week ago Monday, was crisp. I can't remember the last time he's thrown a pick in practice. He's
probably the last time I was there would be my guess, because every time I would
go
you're
there, not allowed to watch.
Every time I go, he throws a pick. Yeah.
I mean, if he's going to be good in the games when you watch him, that's okay. But I don't know if they stopped him in a red zone drill yesterday. I mean, he was just shredded the defense. And I think there's a really fun narrative, guys, where instead of Sam Darnold being this big question mark and he was a product of all the guys in Minnesota, that actually the Seahawks are very fortunate to get a 27-year-old quarterback who's finally figured it out and is ready to be a perfect fit for this offense that is rising with a lot of young players around him. So that could be a fascinating storyline. I think he's ready to seize it.
Good stuff. All right, buddy. Appreciate it. You can watch and read and listen to and just find different ways to interact with Brian through the Hawk Blogger site and his social media and everything else. It's a ton of fun. He does great work and really appreciate the insight. We'll talk again. Thanks, buddy.